Hi everyone, this is Dr. Menije from Embracing You Therapy. Let's talk about first date nerves today. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this anxiety we have around our first date is because here in our practice, Embracing You Therapy, we work with a lot of people with anxiety, generalized anxiety, panic attacks, social anxiety, OCD. And we often don't think that there could be so much debilitating anxiety when it comes to dating, especially on the first date. You may feel like dates are exciting or meeting somebody on a first date is fun and interesting, and that's true, but there can also be a lot of anxiety that shows up for us. So let's talk a little bit about this first date nerves that you might be struggling with. It may seem like irregular anxiety symptoms where you might find yourself overthinking before the date, ruminating the night before, having a hard time sleeping, or the morning or the afternoon before the date, you might find yourself having chest tightness, sweaty palms, and shortness of breath or upset stomach, feeling like you lost your appetite for the date. So these kinds of anxiety symptoms that you have experienced in other times in your life, like before an interview, before taking an exam, they may also be there with you when you're about to go on a first date. Hence, they're called first date nerves. And one of the reasons that we know we struggle with such anxiety right before a date has to do with a lot of our underlying fears. We're afraid of rejection. We anticipate unrealistic and unkind judgments towards the other person. Because of social media, there could also be a lot of comparison of how other people's first dates go, and we get ourselves again all worked up and anxious right before we're going on our first date. The fear of judgment, rejection, comparison all play a role in this anxiety. So I want to talk with you about 3 things you can do, 3 steps you can take to manage the first date nerves. First of all, step 1 is to mentally prepare. Since anxiety tends to feed off of our anxious thoughts, like, what if they don't like me? What if I sound stupid? What if I say something silly? What if I embarrass myself? All these what if worries, what if scenarios can feed into our anxiety. So mentally preparing ourselves mean that we try to observe some of these thoughts, try to reframe some of them, and be more compassionate, gentle towards ourselves, and other times let those thoughts be. Not every thought you have has to be analyzed or investigated and challenged. Sometimes we have to be like, I had that kind of anxious thought, and let it be. So mentally preparing is noticing some of these thoughts we're having that's feeding into our anxiety and try to manage them. Other ways to mentally prepare is to engage in some positive self-talk and to really set realistic expectations. We have to really remind ourselves that some of this pressure we have with first dates and first positive impression can be a little too much. It could be debilitating and it could be daunting. So we do have to remind ourselves that nobody's really holding on to the first date as much as we are, and that when we're in relationships a year or 5 years, sometimes we just kind of laugh at our first date and let that be. So we have to remember that a year from now or 3 years from now, if you happen to be in a relationship with this person, we're not really going to spend that much time thinking about our first date. So really make it like realistic and let go of that pressure that the first date has to be perfect, and to really focus on the things that matters for you, which probably is getting to know this person whom you have maybe spoken or met at a gathering already. And the second thing to really remember when we're managing our first date nerves is to plan ahead. I encourage people to really focus on things that would make this date comfortable for them. So be proactive and initiate and assert your needs. That's what planning ahead means. And planning ahead also means if you're meeting somebody at a new location, look it up, maybe get there a few minutes early. Like if you are like me, who often has a hard time finding the right parking spot and runs a few minutes late to meetings and dinners, I tend to, I try to at least get there a few minutes early, knowing myself and knowing some of the hard times I'm going to have with parking. So planning ahead is, again, being involved in the first date, making choices of what the first date looks like, and, planning ahead that day, and maybe choosing what we want to wear a day before, not to, again, overthink it, but sometimes making these decisions beforehand, knowing where you're going to park, knowing what you're going to wear, makes you feel more comfortable and having like a plan of action in place. And the third thing, which is probably maybe the most important thing as you're handling or managing first date nerves, is to practice self-care. Because I need you to remember that you cannot take care of other people, you cannot be there for other people if you're not taking care of yourself. And like I said, first dates are exciting, and sometimes, years pass and we don't really remember the first date, but what we will remember is how much we were not taking good care of ourselves while we're trying to meet somebody new. So I want you to focus on practicing self-care. The time of that first date, whether it's a morning hike or a afternoon coffee, I really want you to make sure you do not neglect your typical routines. Whatever those morning, midday, or evening routines are, stick to them. Ask yourself what you need that day before the date. If you have other commitments, try to stick to them, because we don't want the date to hijack all other commitments or other activities you typically do for yourself. Like, let's say that date is on a Saturday afternoon for a coffee at 4 o'clock. We don't want you to be anxious all day Saturday until 4 o'clock hits. So stick to your routine, stick to the things that you do every day or during those days, and that way you stay grounded. That way you're kind of taking good care of yourself and not abandoning your routine. And think about other things you might need that are not on your schedule. Like I said, maybe this date is bringing up a lot of anxiety, and that day you want to meditate a little bit more. That day you want to do more art, or you want to do more cooking, or you want to talk with a friend. So make sure to do some self-care that is reminding you that you first have to love yourself before you get to find out who to love next, or who your love might be. It's reminding you that you have to, again, be with yourself first, have a good relationship with yourself first before you can have a relationship with somebody else. And that's why practicing self-care is one of the steps that I would like you to consider when managing first date nerves. Again, I love this topic because we work a lot with anxiety and couples relationship at our practice here in Woodland Hills. If you have any questions, please share them below and I will directly respond to you. And this topic was actually from a blog we recently shared, and I will have the link below as well so you can read about it. And if you have any other questions, please reach out to us and we will be happy to assist you. I'll see you at the next video.